With that, we bring in civil rights attorney Robert Patillo and political consultant Shermichael Singleton. Gentlemen, good to see both of you. We appreciate it. Robert, start with you. Is this a rural-urban issue? Is this a black-white issue? Is this a Democrat-Republican issue? This is a poverty-related issue. Because if you look at the per capita gun violence rate in a state like Mississippi, it's actually higher than what you'll see in a city like Chicago. What we see in America is that very much guns and poverty are connected. And in poor areas, you see more shooting. So instead of banning guns and assault rifles, etc., I'm a gun owner, I'm a gun-owning advocate. I believe that the civil rights tradition is highly rooted in the Second Amendment. If you look at Harriet Tubman all the way to Toussaint Louverture in Haiti, that African Americans always needed guns for protection, particularly from a tyrannical government, more than any other group. However, if you take away the causeway of poverty, then you see the numbers of gun violence and gun deaths reduce significantly. So when we're talking about these calls for gun control, we should be more so having a conversation about fair housing, equal opportunities at education, the ability to have a fair living and a fair wage. That is what brings down gun violence and gun control. How do we deal long-term, yes, with what you're talking about, but short-term, if we're going to try to save lives, isn't the easiest way to do that by locking up bad people
who are committing the crimes
or have guns?
Simple.
But I guess this is my problem with this conversation. We keep talking about gun violence, gun violence, gun violence. Guns don't commit violence. People with guns, particularly bad people with guns, commit that violence. And I'm wondering why, as much as there is an unwillingness on the right to talk about any kind of meaningful gun control laws, there's a complete unwillingness on the left to talk about meaningful enforcement of the gun laws we have.
Yeah, I mean, look, no, you're right. And I think, though, many Americans, including many Democrats, do not like the current Democratic positioning as it pertains to this soft on crime position that many of these prosecutors are taking. Let's take San Francisco, for example. Robert, you're an attorney. They recalled the attorney there, the DA, about 2 years ago because a gentleman refused to go after criminals. He blatantly refused. Let's just release them. Let's not do anything. And people said, wait a minute here. We're sick and tired of living in communities where we could get robbed. You look in D.C. 2 years ago, a gentleman was leaving dinner with his girlfriend and he was murdered. I mean, and it's absurd that you have hardworking people who cannot live in safe communities free of violence. And it's in part because there are some Democrats and a progressive element within the Democratic Party that promote these soft on crime positions that do nothing but harm the most vulnerable, particularly people of color, first and foremost.
The mid-1980s into the 1990s is when we saw this shift among African Americans on the issue of guns. And suddenly that gun control became an issue popular with African Americans. How much of what's happening, we're going to try to have the chief from Shreveport on tomorrow, but in a place of Shreveport, Louisiana, the shootout among kids, probably young adults, young African-American males, who believe now that solving their problems with guns is an acceptable way to do that. That doesn't just come from poverty. That comes from gang culture, rap culture, single-parent households, does it not? Well, I wouldn't blame single-parent households. There are plenty of great single mothers out there. Fair enough. Parents who, but the statistics show there's a link. There's a statistical correlation you can find between anything. You can find a Bible verse that justifies just about anything on earth. But in reality, one, on this issue of soft-on-crime DAs, part of the issue is that you have Republicans who don't even support felons not having guns. Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene want to abolish the IRS. There are lawsuits right now pending in the Supreme Court that will provide for constitutional carry, meaning that there will be absolutely no gun restrictions. They believe when they say shall not be infringed, that means anything at all. And so when we are having these conversations about firearms and guns, we have to talk about the community element. You're correct. We have to talk about the anti-poverty element. You're correct. I also think, as you said, we have to address music, video games, and movies. What is the FCC for anymore? I want to let him respond, though, because Republicans in Missouri, my home state, now allow a 12-year-old to walk down the streets in the city of St. Louis with a loaded firearm. And they say, well, it's constitutional carry. We can't abridge the rights of a 12 or a 14-year-old. How can Republicans complain about Democrats on assault weapons if they're not willing to do that? That's
not the position of the Republican caucus, and I understand Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and a few others. Yeah. But the majority of Republicans have not gone that far. With that said, the Bruin versus New York case was very clear on the Second Amendment as it pertains to Americans having the right to own a firearm, with very few limitations from the federal government. With that in mind, however, good people with guns are not committing the crimes. So why should I? Why should my good friend Robert here have his rights infringed upon as law-abiding gun citizens?
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.